Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMulder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell, and today we're going to be answering a letter from somebody who is wondering how to be a good child to her ailing father. But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that Sierra and I are not licensed mental health practitioners.
No, we are not professionals. We are not trained in any of this. So please take our advice as you see fit. We're only here to offer our humble musings to hopefully shed some understanding and maybe some laughs about the incredibly rewarding, but mostly confusing experience that is love.
All right, everyone, we're going to get into our letter. Today's letter comes from Guilty and Resentful, whose pronouns are she, they, who is writing from Stuckville. Hi, Sam and Sierra. Apologies in advance for the long letter. I'm in a pickle, as you say, a rather large one. Several years ago, I left the big progressive city where I had spent most of my 20s to move back to the South and be closer to my father. He's had some serious health issues, which now include dementia, and he's in assisted living. The idea was that in moving closer, I could be helpful to my stepmother, especially when he was still living at home and she was his full-time caretaker. But to be honest, there really isn't that much that I can do, especially that now he's in a home. His dementia is also rather progressed, so my visits home look like this: a long, awkward dinner, trying to keep up conversation with my stepmother, who I don't particularly get along with, that my dad can't participate in. He'll say something like, "Can we go now?" And then I sit in his room with him while he naps with the TV on. The thing is, I'm deeply unhappy being in the South. As a queer, non-binary person nearing my mid-20s, I'm suffering. I don't belong where I live. I have great friends, but little larger community. Dating has been very hard. I've tried to make life here work, and it's been really financially practical since I work remotely and my costs are so low here, but it isn't working, and I feel like my life will pass me by if I stay. I am feeling called to move to a big progressive city across the country. It is everything that I want: progressive politics, queer community, food and wine, beautiful nature, art, culture. And the thing is, I can. My job and industry is fully remote, and I can go wherever I want. But I feel like a selfish monster, a terrible child, even though I'm not really significantly contributing to my dad. My stepmom even discouraged me from visiting recently because he wasn't very present. I feel like I must stay, just in case. What if something happens to my stepmom and I'm his only family? My brother is completely disconnected from the situation. I should mention that I had a really tough childhood with a mentally ill alcoholic mom who I don't talk to now. And after their divorce, my dad didn't do much to intervene with the abuse that I suffered. He is the passive parent, using Lindsay C. Gibson's framework. I'm not trying to be tit for tat about this, but I just want to provide context that my relationship to my nuclear family is very tough. He was definitely the more stable, warm parent, but he wasn't always the most available, and he definitely didn't defend or protect me. Everything I have in my life, I have had to earn for myself, despite my family. And I'm growing resentful of the idea that I should give everything up, making massive life compromises and stay in a region where I don't want to be for the family that I've spent my adult life overcoming. But I also, of course, do love my father, and I don't want to abandon him in his final years, especially in a country with so little support and care for the elderly, or act selfishly, or even make my stepmother feel like I am not here to support her, even if that support is more symbolic than material. I'd love your thoughts and advice about what we owe our complicated or difficult families and how we balance our personal desires and ability to live our lives to their fullest potential. Sending immense gratitude for all of the guidance and support that you give the JBU community.
All right, my darling, thank you so much for listening and, more importantly, trusting us with this very tender, very real letter. I'm incredibly moved by the questions that you ask, particularly, approaching my 40s, and everyone around me is too. And we are caring for our parents, and we are caring for our community members. We are caring for ourselves as we all deal with disease and aging and the unrelenting march that is time. So your letter resonates with me, even though my lived experience, my life right now looks differently. I, too, am asking myself the same questions in one way or another. we're going to talk a little bit about our opinions on what we think we owe our family members, how to strike a balance or set boundaries, how to be giving in these relationships while still maintaining our own integrity and authenticity. But mostly we're just going to make you feel really loved and supported, because I know that's what your father would want you to feel. But first, we're going to take a really quick break.
All right, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you so much for writing to us, Guilty and Resentful. I think this moment that you're in is, I think, really going to resonate with a lot of folks who are maybe feeling similar things about how to care for family that, many of us didn't choose, and that also may have caused a lot of harm to us. I think that this experience that you're having of wanting to both be a perfect child who can take care of their father in, the end of his time, and also sort of recognizing that, like, the family that you came from isn't necessarily your family anymore, right? That you want to find community elsewhere with folks who haven't caused you harm, or who understand you more deeply in the identities that you carry, or whatever it might be. And recognizing that, like, especially for queer people and trans people, right? Like, so many of us have had to exit from our relationships with our nuclear families in order to find family with folks who aren't necessarily blood related to us, but can offer us the community and support and love that many of us maybe couldn't have gotten from our families. And, we live in a society that is so focused on the nuclear family as being the only or best way for us to engage with relationship with other people. And for sure, that works for some people. Absolutely. Right. And for many people, living with extended family works in lots of meaningful ways. And for some folks, finding family is the way that we need to live our lives. And so I want to just name that, like, I think that a lot of the guilt that you're feeling about this is tied to some of our understandings of what children should be doing for their parents because of our sort of fixation on the nuclear family, especially in the United States. And knowing that you came from a family with an abusive person in it, some of the ways in which you were taught about what your role is in this particular family, right? That it's your job to be the perfect child. I know that especially for folks whose parents are alcoholics, it can be so disrupting to know that sometimes you get a parent who seems to love you and wants to be with you, and sometimes you get a parent who's really mad at you or morose or whatever it is, right? And so it becomes kind of instilled in us that our job is to figure out what we can do to make the good parent come out, right? Like how we can self-efface how we can perform the way that we need to perform to try and make sure that we're not experiencing the parent that is hurtful to us. And so I'm feeling a lot of that in your letter, right? Like this idea that you're a monster, you're a terrible child. I don't think those are words you gave yourself, right? Like, I don't think that you pulled those from your understanding of who you are. I think that those words were given to you, probably by somebody, your mother, who seemed to be somebody who caused you a lot of harm. And I don't want you repeating those words to yourself just because you're in a place where you want to do something different than sit in a town where you don't feel welcome or loved or supported, and spend time in a way that doesn't actually feel like you're actually helping someone, right? Like, that doesn't make you a selfish, terrible person. That just makes you a person who's trying to navigate what is a really difficult and tricky situation and holds multiple things that you want to be true, that you want to support your dad, and also you want to live your life. And those things are beautiful and wonderful, and also in some ways maybe a little incompatible. That doesn't make you selfish. That just makes you a person navigating relationships with people and navigating your own relationship with yourself, which is like the only thing that we can do as people who are in relationship with ourselves and others.
Yes. Wow. You got me on that one. Because you're so right. Like, where did you get that language? And as a child of a of a sober alcoholic that comes from a dysfunctional family, I know that we have a really hard time determining our own needs. We have trouble making decisions. We have feelings of inadequacy when we aren't caretaking or whatnot. And it's so beautifully true. It's so beautifully simple the way Sam laid it out for us. Like, if we take away that language, what are we left with? Somebody who is unhappy, somebody who needs more out of their community and environment, and somebody who feels emotionally torn because you care about your father. I think that you should just take a moment in this episode to recognize that there's nothing wrong with you, that you're not being selfish for wanting to live your life, and that you're not being selfish for questioning what other options out there. That doesn't make you a monster. Nothing about this letter makes Sam and I look at what you have told us and think ill of you. Not even a little. In fact, I have so much compassion and admiration for you. And I think about Mary Oliver, because I'm a sucker and a poet. You know, her famous quote, tell me, what are you going to do with your one wild and precious life? Your father is at the edge, at one side of his life. And if he had the consciousness that he had once, he would look at you somewhere in what is hopefully the first half of your life, and he would tell you to go live your life. He would tell you to not wait for him on the edge of death. Because I also know, as a stranger on the internet, I know with every fiber of my being, not only does he want this for you, but that if he needed you in any way, if your family needed you in any way, you would step up, right? You would find a way. You would, if something happened to your stepmother, that's one of your fears. What happens if something happens to her? Who's going to take care of my dad? Well, you will, or you'll find somebody who will, or you'll adapt to that situation. It's abundantly clear to me that you have resilience, and you're smart and capable, and you care. So if something were to happen, you can rest in that. I am a good person, and if something were needed of me, I would be there. Look at me now. I'm here where nothing is needed of me, and I'm here ready to be there, right? You have this one wild and precious life, and it goes by so fast. It goes by so fast. Faster every day, it feels like. And I, a stranger across the internet, and your loved ones want you to seek happiness and joy and pleasure and excitement and adventure and community and support, even if their physical state right now can't articulate that. Even if your father wasn't someone who would say, go, go, go in his normal life. I would like to imagine that his best self, the self not tainted by heartbreak and pain and shitty parents and regrets, everything that tarnishes our human souls, everything that limits us and our ability to love freely. I would like to imagine that the core of his soul, no matter how he acted in his lived life, would want you to go live your one wild and precious life, because I want that of you. He wants that of you. Sam wants that of you. And I just want to give you full and unadulterated permission to choose your life. Choose your life, because you could wake up tomorrow and you could have been in that same town for 10 years.
You have this idea of tit for tat, and you kind of explained to us the ways in which your dad was absent or that he was unavailable to you. And I just want to say that even if your dad was the best dad that I've ever experienced or heard of, I would give you the same advice, which is that you, like Sierra said, you have to go live your life. You have to find the things that are going to support and bring you joy. And again, like Sierra said, if something else happens, right? If things change, if he's no longer doing well in the assisted living, if your stepmother can't take care of him anymore, right? You always have the option to come back. It will always be available to you. And even as you're out there living your life, you can come visit, you could spend a week, a month out there if you need to, right? Like there's so many different ways in which this could look different that could support you as much as you're trying to support your dad. And it's not selfish to say, this isn't working for me. This isn't helpful. I feel unsupported. I feel unhappy. Your ability to take care of your dad is also dependent on your ability to take care of yourself, and your needs deserve tending to. And I encourage you to think about not just like either I'm with my dad 100% of the time, or I'm a terrible child who moved away and have abandoned him. What's the in between here, right? How can we get out of the black and white and say, no, I can be somebody who takes care of myself, who does the things that I want, to lives in communities where I feel loved and supported and held, and figure out what it looks like for me to also support my dad, whether that's calling him more often, talking to your stepmother, right? Going to visit more often, right? There's so many different ways that this can look that aren't just those two extremes. And I want to invite you into that, because I know that like when I'm in my most sort of depressive or anxious moments, like that black and white thinking can get really intense, but you have a lot of different options available to you here. And I want you to pick one, and then I want you to see how well that's working. And then I want you to pick it again or pick another one, right? That is the reality of life. And the way that we can navigate these different eras of our lives is that we also have to continue to make decisions that are taking into account what's actually true, what's actually real. You leaving now doesn't mean you're leaving forever. It just means that you're leaving now, and that you might come back, you might never, right? Like there's so many different ways that our wild and wonderful lives will unfold, and we can't predict with any certainty what one thing is going to do to cause another, right? We just have to keep choosing, and then keep choosing again over and over again as time goes on. We get new information, things develop, and as our needs and our desires change. Right now, it sounds like your needs and desires are to find community elsewhere, and I think that that's something that you should be listening to. You can always come back. You can always do something different. But right now, what it sounds like you need is some time to build yourself back up after what has been a really rough time for you.
Yeah. And I think, Sam has taught me a lot about how to live within your values with intention. And if your value right now is to find like-minded community and support your father and your family, then you can move into this next season of your life with that on the forefront of your heart, saying, I'm going to live in this different city, and I'm going to set aside this amount of money every paycheck so that I can go back every 3 weeks, like Sam said, or I'm going to have an emergency fund so that that if something were to happen or something were to turn for the worse, that I could leave immediately, and obviously I'm talking about like financial choices, but there are emotional choices here too, going into relationships, letting people know, going into community, letting people know that this is going on in your life, and that allowing them to see this part of you, allowing them to help carry it with you. And I also just want to say that I have lost a family member to dementia, so I understand what a really, truly humbling and confusing disease this can be, and the experience of it. It can either go wicked fast or feel like it's going so slowly, and that you don't know what your loved one needs. I just want to say that I think it's okay for you to rest in understanding that you were there when your father needed you to be there, and you will live in his spirit, in his memory, in the times that you shared with him, that he's not necessarily needing you right now the way that you showed up for him historically. And I know that's confusing. I know that dementia is so confusing, especially for the caretakers. I invite you to look upon what your father's needs are with a morally neutral lens, that you're not being a bad child by giving him space or not visiting him all the time, and that he's not hurt by that. And that if there were a way for you to support him, if you were, let's say, if he wasn't in a facility and that he was living at home and he needed, you needed to be there at night so that he wasn't walking out of his bed and whatever, then you would do that. But that's not the case right now. And it's not that you're selfish. It's not that you're a bad person or a bad child. It's the logistical reasoning of reality right now. And I know that's hard because dementia is so incredibly emotional and confusing. Anyway, this is all to say everything that Sam and I said and more, because we know that this is complex and emotional and personal and nuanced. And we also know that there are 1,000 other circumstances that Sam and I don't have access to right now that are influencing what you're feeling. But we hope that you take a break, like a forever break from feeling like a bad person, because you have needs as well. And I want you to rest in the peace and the liberation that is the fact that your Father wants you to live your life.
This is such an important time in your life, and we're really honored that you came to us in this moment of confusion and decision. We hope that this helps, and we hope that you know that we love you.
We love you so much.
All right, everyone. It is Friday, and on Fridays, we do our blind date. This is when we try and set you up with something that we think you're really going to like. This week, our blind date is...
It's a book that Sam and I and a couple of our friends read in our book club last month or last round. It is called The Mercies by Kieran Millwood Hargrave. We read it like last month, but my wife is reading it now, and she's sort of like narrating me through her reading experience. And it was really, I enjoyed the book the first round. I thought it was like really good. I would probably rate it like 4 out of 5 on Goodreads, and enjoyed the conversation that our book club had. But I really loved hearing the book through my wife's perspective and sort of like reliving it. And it made me appreciate the things that I liked about the book that much more. So it's been on my mind like longer than I read it, which I think is a sign of a really good book. It's set in the 1600s in a Norwegian coastal village where all of the majority of the men on this island have been killed in a storm. And so the remaining women are forced to adapt. And there are themes of alleged witchcraft and indigenous practices and sexism and patriarchy and all of these things, and a little bit of queerness. And I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was very visceral, very well written, very concise, but gave me everything I needed. So you should check it out. It was a pretty easy read. Like once you get into the first chapter, it's like a hard first chapter, and then the rest of it was a super easy read.
Yes, agree with that.
And I love the title.
Yes,
called The Mercies by Kieran Millwood Hargrave.
Yeah, we all loved it. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like more content from us, or if you would like access to our monthly office hours, you can support us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you'll get an additional bonus weekly episode, as well as access to those monthly office hours. That's patreon.com/justbreakuppod.
You can slide into our DMs, send us your favorite relationship meme, but most importantly, you can submit your questions about all matters of the heart at justbreakuppod.com, which is also where you can find our merchandise.
Please remember to like, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review. This literally keeps our mics on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need 2 random strangers giving them relationship advice.
Just Break Up is a production of Duvid Media, original music, recording, editing, producing, all magical things by our good friend Spencer Worth Davis. Make sure to check out his podcasts and his music. And remember, here's a poem by Mary Oliver. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper, This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaw back and forth instead of up and down, who is grazing around with her enormous, complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And if all else fails,
just break up.